I'm wetting the paper, the top part of the paper, with a flat 1-inch brush. I'm adding lots of water, so there's lots of puddles there, using a plastic store card cut up. I'm just going to tap into those blobs of watercolours, and I'm just tapping to the right hand side there as well, just to take some of the excess paint off. And I'm just touching the wet paper, and what I just love is the way the paint just flows up. It dilutes as it goes up towards the top part of the sort of sky area. At the moment it's quite abstract, but I kind of think it looks like trees and the sky, quite by accident. So I'm just going to let that sort of flow and do its own thing. It's just sort of experimenting, just see what happens. So I'm using my pipette and I'm just getting some fresh clean water here. You can do this with a brush, but I'm just dropping in more water, and you can see that sort of turquoise is escaping there. And what I love is that these three colours are kind of separate but also mixed together. So just sort of dripping in water here and there with the pipette just to see what happens. My sort of mind is open to sort of going with the flow, see what happens, see if I can sort of develop something with this. It could be quite abstract, but I normally sort of head down that sort of landscape, cityscape, seascape sort of route, which I so enjoy. So I'm collecting those puddles now with my brush. I'll also use paper towel just to really make sure I get rid of some of those puddles tilting at the end there. So going back in with the pipette, just drizzling in some more water here and there. So that dilutes the paint, but also you get these magical effects where these sort of watercolour sort of spreads out and it almost gives the look of sort of trees. And I'm tilting again. So this is messy, it is fun though, and it's very creative, very experimental. One thing I find with the turquoise and the quinacridone rust by M. Graham, they have all this texture which you may notice on the left there, and it's picked up these sort of grains in the Fabriano rough paper as well. So I quite like that about it, but don't worry if your paint doesn't do that. So again, mopping up there. So I'm wetting the bottom half of the painting. I'm leaving a gap though, so I don't want to disturb the paint above and have it run down. I'm just tapping in to the paint again and just touching that wet surface here and there. So this is obviously paint straight from the tube, but I'm diluting it on the paper. So as you can see there's some darker colours there with the paint slightly thicker. And it's much more diluted to the right hand side where you can see the colours, the golden quinacridone rust colour with the turquoise and the violet. So again, I'm tilting here and I'm spritzing just to get the paint to run down. I kind of want it to be reflections, and maybe this is kind of like a lake, but I'm still open to maybe changes, and I've sort of caught a bit of the top part of the painting there, so it's run down on the bottom left. So that looks quite exciting. Adding a little bit more of the paint there and sort of tapping on the surface there to mix the colours, and again applying it to the damp surface. I've got quite a lot of the quinacridone rust there on the right, so a lovely brown colour. Added a touch more of the turquoise as well. The turquoise and quinacridone rust can make some quite nice greens as well. So I'm just sort of getting a little bit more of the quinacridone rust there and sort of applying it to the left hand side. So you don't need to keep applying all three colours. I'm just applying the quinacridone rust. I'm also applying it to the white of the paper that hasn't been wet. So back with my pipette now. The painting hasn't dried and I'm just applying this to the paint I've just applied with the card, and again tilting and just seeing what happens, and it's starting to look more like a landscape now. So I'm kind of going in this direction. Looks like trees and a beautiful sort of light sky. Again, just pick up those puddles. It'll just give you control. Otherwise you're just tilting all these puddles. What I love to do is scratch into the surface of the paper. It is permanent. I'm actually using my pipette to do this, but you could use your plastic card to create the look of tree trunks and branches. And just going back in, diluting and tilting with the pipette. I'm sort of hardly touching the paper really. I'm letting the water do all the work, and of course the card with the paint, and tilting again. Using the pipette to scratch into the surface there, but also to move the paint and create thin lines. I love working like this and actually not using a brush. Sometimes a brush you can tighten up using a brush, where you can be quite loose using sort of different things you find maybe lying around the house or the garden. So I'm just finishing off by mopping up here, and I'm going to let my painting dry. So I've continued on here developing the painting by just using my size 4 brush with the colours, mixing up the quinacridone rust with the violet with a touch of the turquoise, and I'm just painting in some trees with the shapes that were left by the paint there. And I've also painted some birds in using the tip of my size 4 brush. So I've gone down the landscape route. Your painting, if you do so, you might end up with something very different. And you don't even have to make it look representational. You could just keep it abstract. That's the fun and using these experimental techniques. If there are things that you don't like, you can lift them off with a clean, damp brush, which is what I'm doing here. It doesn't take it fully off, so I've decided to add another tree using my brush this time. So I've mixed up some of the quinacridone rust with a pinch of the turquoise, and I'm just sort of painting wet on dry, using the belly of the brush to sort of give a dry brush effect to create some texture on this tree here. Using my paper towel here just to take off the excess paint to make sure I've got a dry brush, and using the belly of the brush to apply the paint, so you get that lovely side brush, dry brush effect that creates wonderful texture for trees especially. So just adding a few more details here and there to finish off my painting. And here is the finished painting. I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that it inspires you to have a go at experimenting in watercolours. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments section. And if you'd like to support the content that I create here on YouTube, why not think about joining my Patreon membership? You will get access to my weekly exclusive tutorials. More details about the membership can be found in the description below. Thank you so much for watching this tutorial. Happy experimenting. Bye for now.